Nikki, pleasure to have you on here. So stoked we were able to do this. I was running a bit late as we were just chatting about, but we're here now.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Um, I've been listening to your music for a bit now, and you have a fantastic voice. I really, really dig it. It's awesome. You know, yeah, and
Thanks.
it made me wonder when did you kind of start to develop your voice? Did it take some time to figure out like what exactly your voice is? Because it's so unique and very special. I really dig it.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I've always been singing, since I was little. Um, but yeah, definitely, take I think took a while to develop my own sound.
Yeah,
Um, being like influenced by so many different things growing up and um so yeah, I feel like I'm finally like really, really sitting in my voice, you know.
how long did it take you to start feeling the way that you do now about your voice? Was it pretty early on when you started to develop it that you were like, yeah, this is what it needs to sound like?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also like just going through different like songwriting phases also, so being younger, like when I was in high school and what I was kind of writing then, being a lot more like immature, just writing wise. And so I think it's maybe more so learning how to write for your voice. So that's something I think like I've really started to feel a lot more confident about in the last like 6 years or so. Um, yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Who were some vocalists that you were really kind of attracted to when you started to get into finding your own voice?
I mean, growing up, I was really influenced by like my grandpa was a jazz musician, so he showed me like Sarah Vaughan and Billie Holiday, who are huge influences. And like I remember he gave me a Jackie Wilson CD, and who else? So a lot of like soul singers, Aretha, Candy Staton was the big one. Um, and then, kind of, I like started to write songs kind of, when a lot of sort of the powerhouse vocalists like were popular, like Whitney Houston and Mariah Carey. And so like that whole sort of like 90s, 2000, early 2000s era of just like really powerful female vocalists. Like I remember being in the car, when I was little and hearing like Mariah Carey's Hero come on the radio and just being like, whoa. So a lot of different influences. But then like my parents were really into kind of like rock and reggae. My dad was really into reggae, and my mom listened to like a lot of Bonnie Raitt and Joni Mitchell. So like, way different vocalists than say like Whitney Houston, but equally as impactful for me for sure.
Good variety there.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you do any tricks to keep your vocal cords kind of warmed up and sounding the way that you want to sound?
Sleep is like honestly the number one thing. If I'm tired, if I haven't gotten any sleep, it's just gone. So I think sleep and little things that you kind of forget are super helpful, like gargling salt water before you go to bed. And it really does heal your vocal cords. So I think, yeah, for me, like if I'm singing a lot, or on the road, just trying to not talk super loud, at shows, like at the merch table, trying to speak softly, if possible. And yeah, a lot of fluids, teas, that kind of stuff. It's funny because every voice teacher I've ever had has told me to speak higher, like in a higher tone, because I kind of naturally have somewhat of a deeper voice, and can be a little grumbling. It's a hard thing to try to um you know maneuver your natural speaking voice, but so which I haven't really done, but it's something that I've always been told to try to do.
I mean, I would just say don't do it at this point because whatever you're doing is working. So just keep it the same.
I appreciate that. I'll take your advice.
You're from Pennsylvania, correct?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And I've read that it's right outside of Philly is where you were really born. Yeah.
Yeah, I was born like 20 minutes outside of the city.
Pretty close.
Yeah.
Very nice. Now, where did you get into music at a young age there? Were you kind of exploring what that city had to offer in terms of music?
Um, yeah, not like, I mean, by the time I was old enough to like go to shows solo, I wasn't, I had kind of moved. Was kind of like on my way to college. So I mean, I would go to like big shows. Um, but I mean, yeah, I think it's definitely had an influence, and I had a lot of friends, I had like a band in high school and a lot of friends that I played with outside of school. But yeah, I think Philly definitely had somewhat of an influence for sure.
What was the name of your band in high school?
It was called Gibbous Groove.
Ooh, very nice.
Gibbous like the moon phase.
It's sleek. That's a good title. That's a good
Thank you
band
so
name.
much. Thank you.
Um, and where you living now? Are you on the West Coast or East Coast?
Yeah, I'm in LA now. I've been here about 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
How you liking it? Good.
Yeah, I like it. It's taken me a little while to feel settled. I wasn't necessarily like planning on moving to LA. I was in New York for about 7 years. And just have always been on the East Coast. So, but now I really like it now.
You ever move back?
Maybe, I think the goal is to be just bi-coastal, have one place in each city. But I think for me, as having grown up, and my parents were from New York, so I grew up kind of going in and out of the city a lot, and a lot of my musical development and just a lot of relationships there too. I think for me, like it's important to spend time there, just to fill the cup, fill my soul a little bit.
Sure. Now, if you were to move, let's say next month, would you have that same kind of feeling towards the West Coast of moving back and and retaining your feelings for out here while
Yeah,
you're out there?
I think so. I think, LA and New York, everyone's always like, which city do you like better? And I feel like they're so different and they serve such different purposes, at least for me. I think being out here, I had to get used to the pace being a little bit slower, but I think that also caters towards being able to focus on projects, a little bit more. Where New York can be just a grind in terms of like the day to day. So I'm happy that I'm not in that at the moment. But yeah, I think I definitely have like fond places for both cities.
Just waiting to buy both houses by coastal, like you said. And you mean like south of east, you mean like Florida, right? Like not New York again. You mean like having a house in Florida? That's where
Yeah,
you want to.
definitely Florida.
Okay, yeah, yeah. That's what I just gathered from that's outside perspective, of course. And you're a multi-instrumentalist, correct?
I am, yeah.
Wow. When did you start kind of picking up different sorts of instruments?
I started piano when I was really little. Like I think I was like 4, and I asked my parents if I could take piano lessons, and they tried to send me. And then I think the teacher, if I remember correctly, like sent me home because like she's like her fingers are just like too small right now. So yeah, I started piano when I started up again when I was about 6. And it was always I was kind of in and out of like proper lessons. I didn't learn like straight classical, piano for like my whole life. But I had some really great teachers that kind of yeah, were kind of catered towards like what I was into. When I got like more into songwriting, and had teachers that kind of catered towards like accompanying myself and that kind of thing.
Well,
So yeah,
about finger strength, of course.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, a lot of piano for most of my life, and have played guitar just kind of on my own. Never really studied it.
Wow. That's really interesting. Are you of this idea that the piano is the most versatile instrument that somebody could play? Like it lends itself to so many different areas within music.
Um, I think, yeah, I mean, yeah, I would agree with that for sure in a sense, just that, if you know, I mean, I guess there's so many types of keyboards, right? So like playing piano is like way different than playing like a clavinet or playing an organ. So technique wise, it's a whole different bag. But I guess in terms of the layout, if you know the layout in one, and you can it makes you versatile. Yeah, I guess it caters towards being like a versatile instrumentalist where you can play another keyboard, um, you know.
Ray Manzarek style, yeah, crossed over.
Yeah,
I've
which I
I've
mean,
seen the
it's definitely
videos.
something it's something that I love about, being a keyboardist, because it's like you can also feel, you sit down in a whirly and it just feels it almost like caters towards writing a whole different way, than you would sitting down in a piano.
Is that how you would you do right now? Is that you kind of it's everything is branched off from the piano?
Not necessarily. I think it always changes for me. It's kind of like wherever the inspiration comes from. That's like, I try to catch the lightning in a bottle when it's there, but it's also for sure a practice, so I kind of try and be in both mindsets, where sometimes I'll just sit down and play some chords to try and get something going, or like a lot of times I've used, like you can see here, like my rhythm bass, so just like
Mm.
old, analog drum machine, just like get a little beat going. And um yeah, so kind of depends, or I'll just have like a random lyrical phrase maybe that I've written in my notes, that I want to kind of start from.
Are these notes being written down in the phone, or are you handwriting these notes?
um the last couple of years it's been usually like written down my phone to start, or I have like a million voice memos, which is why I have no room in my phone.
Start sorting through those.
Yeah, exactly, and not be too precious about them.
And you also studied music in college, correct?
Yeah, I did.
Wow. Now,
Yeah,
did that impact? Is at Berkeley, correct?
yeah, yeah.
And not Berkeley of California, Berkeley, Massachusetts, right?
Right, Berklee College of Music in Boston. Yeah.
Mm. How did that have an effect on the way that you write music or perform music now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I went to Berkeley, they have a lot of different majors there, which is what was appealing for me, because I didn't want to get like a degree in performance, and I didn't know that I wanted to teach. So I liked the idea. I did contemporary writing and production was like my major, which I liked because it was kind of a blanket major that studied like all different types of writing. So anything from like commercial kind of stuff to um, your own songwriting. But I
To
kind of
jotting
like,
down notes in a phone. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
All
yeah,
platforms.
yeah, exactly.
Versatile, if you will.
Yeah, but I like that it focused on like, arranging for an orchestra kind of stuff, and kind of got into the basics of production and a little bit of recording. So I felt like I learned more tools than uh where it didn't like necessarily impede on, because I think sometimes when you study like your art and your passion, like for instance songwriting specifically, it can get a little, I think keeping just that spirit of like of freedom and within writing is really important. So I don't know, a lot of people say like, taking all the information and then just try and like throw it away, so it's like in there somewhere, but it's not restricting you from being creative.
Right. Did you come to that realization of I don't want to hinder this creative process, or I don't want to burden it with having it tied to school? Did you find that early on within going to college?
Yeah, I think I did, and I think I that's kind of why I chose the major that I did, because I was like, all right, this is I can do the technical part of like schooling to learn like how to write for different instruments, like learn the theory end of stuff and um all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I feel like I made a pretty conscious decision in that way.
And through that time, you were still singing. I'm assuming, yes.
Yeah, I was performing. I had a band in college, and I mean, I think Boston's a cool. I think it was a really cool city to go to school in for that because there's so many colleges there. But it's a proper city, and there was a lot of venues, so it was kind of a good place to like be going to school, but also start kind of getting your feet wet, in terms of performing and having an actual band and all that kind of stuff.
Very nice. And did you stay there a little bit of time there after school, or did you move immediately?
I moved pretty quick. I stayed there for the summer and then I moved down back in with my parents for about 6 months, and I was commuting into New York, interning at like a commercial music house and touring with Turquoise. They're like a funk band that was based in Brooklyn at the time. So I was touring with them and working on my first uh, album, and yeah, interning and living in my parents' house.
Yeah, a lot of stuff on your plate right there at that time.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a really interesting time.
Wow, yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff going on. What year was that when you kind of decided that you wanted to create your own band?
Well, I had a band in college when I was in college.
And of course the high school one,
Right.
not gonna
So
slight that one.
yeah, so it was kind of the extension. When I moved to New York, I was still working on the project that I had like started in college.
Wow. That's
Yes.
that's that's did it change kind of the course of what you thought it would be throughout like your time in college? Like, okay, I want to do this and I don't want to do this, or did it kind of focus in on what you wanted to do?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think I was definitely like eager to be performing and touring. And I was looking at like my degree as tools to be able to write and lead a band um and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely coming out of school. I mean, I was interning, like I said, at a commercial music house. So it was something I was because that was my major, something I was, considering. And I kind of quickly I didn't pursue that in terms of like a full-time thing, which a lot of my friends or people that I know like did the same sort of major did, being in like a commercial studio or like a film scoring studio full time, because I think probably because I started touring with this band, and that's kind of like what I was really into.
What is the atmosphere like when you're in that commercial setting, like making music like that? Does it feel just vastly different from being in a studio working with musicians that it's not going to a film score or scoring something else? What is the difference like for you?
I mean, it's definitely more fast paced, and it's more, you're essentially, for most of that stuff, not all of it, you're taking like a brief from a client, and they're trying to tell you what they want in likely not musical terms. So it's like you having to interpret, okay, like what does this person want? What do these people want to hear? And just trying to be like really detailed and kind of formulaic, so there's that element of like formula, that it's like advertising.
Sure.
uh,
So you're
but it
Mad
can be
Men.
fun,
Got it.
like, yeah, totally.
You're John
But
Hamm. Okay,
it can be fun, like just to play and sing maybe like in a style that you isn't necessarily what you would put out for your own stuff. But I think it can get a little bit like monotonous, when you're doing it all the time.
mhm. How long did you do it for? How long was that stint within that creating music for clients and whatnot?
I mean, I still do that here and there. So but I do it just like freelance kind of work. So, yeah, I think I did like the internship and kind of maybe subconsciously made the decision to not like really pursue doing that full time. But it's something I've always kept those relationships and tried to do part time.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And of course, as you mentioned before, around this time that you were kind of starting to make your own project as well as working with another band.
Right.
Wow. When did you start kind of lending your abilities to other people's projects?
Um, I guess that was kind of like the first real that band, which was called Turquoise, was the first, yeah, time that I was like doing that in a like a professional sense.
How did that feel for you? Did it kind of like change the pace of like, whoa, this is kind of different, or did you feel really comfortable doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always been something that I've worked on like balancing in my life, because I think um there's an element of like it's nice to be able to be like, this is ready to be, this is what time, where you don't have to like do the ins and outs of planning everything. And I think like background singers and it's really hard at times to be a kind of like work for hire musician, where I think people don't realize it's a lot of like you have to have a really strong adaptability. And um yeah, and inevitably I think as artists, you get invested emotionally in projects that you might not necessarily have stake in a way of deciding direction of things. I mean, with that project, I was a member, but I wasn't doing any like the writing at the time. There was a couple core people that were doing that. So, um, I loved it because it was fun, and it was a really fun band, and everyone was so talented. And it was just exciting. We were young and just like touring and playing really cool shows, and it was a really big sound, a lot of vocals, and so it was something that I really I valued in a lot of different ways, but definitely a different mindset than leading something yourself.
Sure, definitely. It's still within music, but it's your foot's off the gas and you're just kind of along for the ride.
Right, totally.
Gotcha. And what was the album that you were personally working on for your own project at that time? What was the title of that one?
It was called Good People, and it came out, and it is no longer on the internet.
It was
uh
there for a minute and then it's gone.
it was, yeah, it's gone now. I mean, I'm sure it's lingering around. And but yeah, I took down the album itself just because I felt like some of my songwriting was a little immature.
And I will be linking that below if you guys are interested in listening to it. I do have a copy
Sounds
of it.
it's out there somewhere.
It's out there. It's underneath this video, so please go ahead and click and click that. Um, and this was around what year that you kind of launched your
That
project?
was 2011.
2011. Did that was that the time that you were most submersed within music and in almost all the facets of your life, like working with another band, working on your music, and working at the internship?
Um, I would say not necessarily, but it was the first time I was doing that. So um it was definitely, it was cool to do all of those things. And it was the first time I was kind of trying to figure all of that out. I mean, ultimately I ended up leaving that band because I wanted to be able to focus more time on my own thing. And we were starting to tour more. So yeah, but and I was working like a bunch of different I was nannying and working at restaurants and stuff. So still doing all the side hustles. But yeah, it was the first time that I was that immersed in different things musically.
Wow. That's and of course, you would sing to the children that you would nanny, and you worked at a an opera-based restaurant, correct? So you really never did escape it, even with these side hustles?
Right, exactly.
Wow. It just doesn't stop, huh? Was your idea of making your own band, did you always want to have it under the title of your own name, Nicky Egan? Was that kind of what you wanted from the get-go?
I guess that's just like that's just always it always just felt like it was always coming from me, you know. So I guess I didn't feel like a need to make like making like a different artist name just never felt like authentic to me. A lot of it's like most of it, if not most of it, is at least the stuff that's always hit hardest has been like autobiographical, you know. So I think if I was doing like a different project that what was not that or was more like co-leading with someone else, yeah, we would do some sort of like band name. But it always just felt like silly to me.
Right. Now, this album that is now not anywhere until this is released, obviously, and I'll link it. But the previously mentioned album that you kind of you wiped away, was that vastly different from what you're doing now, sound wise, or was it in the same realm of what you're doing now? It just you weren't. It wasn't up to snuff for you.
Yeah, no, like I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm super proud of that album. You know, like recorded it all in Boston with a good friend of mine, a guitarist whose name is Johnny Simon, and he is an amazing musician. And we had like a full string section come in, and we had horns, and a lot of the songs were it was beautifully recorded. And not too far off, definitely like in the soul kind of realm. I think I just personally felt like some songs I was writing from like a perspective that like wasn't necessarily mine, um, and I just kind of still figuring out more so like my songwriting voice. Um, but yeah, it wasn't too far off, and it was a really amazing experience recording that record.
Did you kind of take that idea that you were making, kind of hit pause on it and reassessed what you wanted to make? Or did you at that point, the next kind of album that you made was sort of inching towards what you wanted to create?
Yeah, I think the next album, EP, which is still up, which is called the 45 Homestead Project.
We're actually gonna take that one down. We're gonna replace them. We're gonna swap them. That one's gonna be gone, and we're gonna put the first one in. Okay.
Yeah,
Just letting
right.
everybody know.
Yeah, I think that was getting towards where I wanted to be sound wise, for sure.
And how soon after did you start recording the second EP, and in between the release of the first album?
I mean, definitely started like writing for it, probably like, 2013, maybe even actually before then, because I think I started to release it, if not, I think I released it in 2014. So I think I was probably already, by the time I was releasing that first piece of work, I think I was probably already starting to write for the second one.
Mhm. Now, with the shifting of the tones and figuring out what you wanted to do, were you keeping the same band members within your group, or was it kind of a revolving door anyways, that you're kind of, this person will play with me for a bit and then this person will take his place and blah blah blah?
So Johnny, that same guitarist, worked on the second album with me. So he was common thread through there, and we were kind of like just, yeah, writing partners. And um but I guess because I had moved cities, some of the other, yeah, like personnel had changed, just mostly for that reason. And the other two guys that were on that first record were touring pretty much full time with their new project, and those guys are like my best friends in the whole world still. And one of them played on my most recent album, on a couple tracks. So it's always been, they kind of have come in and out. But people doing their own thing, and so just kind of like, yeah, like revolving door in that sense.
So, I mean, when you found 4 cello players for this last album that you did, I mean, that was kind of, you brought everybody that you did use before.
No, but I do, I've worked with a lot of really amazing people, so I definitely try to, it's nice to keep work, continue working, develop with the same people too.
It's important. It's important to keep those relationships alive,
Yeah, for sure.
even outside of music. I'll even go that far.
Yeah.
To the people listening to this, some people need to go though. That's just part of life.
Yeah, some people need the boot.
That's, that's it. You're out of here. But some people do need to stay, Nikki. And as you know, with some people, um, what made you want to take the leap between New York and LA? What kind of drew you out here to the West Coast?
I kind of like thought about it a little bit, but I got I got hit up by Chicano Batman's manager, who was a friend of mine, and he reached out to me. I think maybe I had like mentioned to him, we were, talking like late night, maybe weeks before, and I was like, maybe I'll come out to LA or something. And so anyway, he reached out to me and said, I'm working with this band and they need someone to play keys for this upcoming spring tour. And he said, but you have to be based in LA. And at the time I was kind of like at a bit of like a crossroads with my own stuff, and kind of felt like I needed a bit of a break from my own project, and thought like, listen to the stuff. I was like, this is cool, maybe I'll just do the touring thing for these other guys for a while and just like, kind of regroup. So I kind of like just packed 2 bags and left like a couple weeks later. And
Only 2 bags,
2 bags, yeah.
just
I
the
mean, I still had
essentials.
my place in Brooklyn, and I wasn't sure, it was kind of like a trial to start, and I wasn't sure if I was going to stay out there. Um, so yeah, it was kind of like, all right, let's see what happens. And they ended up, yeah, hiring me, through the summer, and then had a big fall tour plan. So at that point, my roommates in Brooklyn were like, you can't sublet forever. So I made the leap. It was like, definitely one of those, which I don't, I think they come little times throughout your life where it was like a very clear, like kind of universal, well, that was weird. Like one very specific night that I was just like kind of like up to here with it, and literally, and got that text that same night. So I was like, maybe this is a little window.
Sure. Um, how did it feel to be like, all right, like, yeah, I'll just do it. Like I'll try this out, even packing just the first 2 bags. What was going through your mind at the time? You're like, I'm excited for this, or I'm nervous for this. What was going through your mind?
Definitely all those things. Excitement and a lot of nerves. And I had been working really hard on a project in New York, and an element of like disappointment that I was kind of just gonna like put a toothpick in it for, that's not the right phrase, but you know what I
No, I
mean.
like it. No, it's a new one that we're taking now. The toothpick. We're putting the toothpick in it.
um
We're replacing the pin. Fuck that shit. Toothpick only. I like it, Nikki. I'm with you. Anyways, you're putting the toothpick in.
yeah, I put the toothpick in. So there was an element of like, I felt like there was some momentum that I was kind of like, you know losing, but I was also excited at being like hired for a really cool gig and a cool band. And that's something I've always wanted to be able to like provide, doing like the work for hire kind of thing. And those guys, it was like they were starting they had put out an album. It was the first album on ATO Records, and it was doing well. I mean, the second show I played with them was like playing on Conan, and so that was like, it was cool, and they just really like put a lot of trust in me to play all different keyboards, all different synths that like I didn't necessarily play live before that at all.
Wow.
So I think like there was, yeah, there's that, definitely that element of excitement to be able to do something else that was like moving and kind of already had, an operation going, and just being able to kind of like just play and explore other elements of like myself as a musician, um to be able to kind of regroup. So,
Right.
and LA is a hard place to move to, so I think I was definitely thankful to have a gig, and I had a bunch of good friends that moved out here at the same time, so that made it easier for sure.
Yeah. I feel like that'd be good. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
you're moving? Oh yeah. Okay. I'll meet you out there. That kind of thing.
Yeah, that was definitely how it went down. I was like, two of my really good friends were out here house sitting for someone. I was like, can I like crash with you guys for a couple weeks? Surprise,
Uh,
I'm coming too.
it's good. You gotta you can't. Sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. You know,
Right.
put a toothpick in it. During that time of working on that project that you were working on back in Brooklyn, and you just sort of changed pace during that time. Um, were you still doing like the work for hire kind of thing? Like were people still bringing you in at some points, like, hey, can you play keys or sing backup or whatever they wanted you to do? Were you still doing that kind of thing sporadically?
Yeah. Yeah, I was filling in with Turquoise, the band that I had been in. They were going through some changes with like their new singers. So I remember I filled in for like a couple weeks again with them. Um and then yeah, still like here and there just doing some like commercial vocal work. I say like mostly that aside from my own stuff.
I mean, of course, yeah. You gotta be doing that. You gotta be on it with the clients as you do because you're Don Draper. We all know that advertising company.
Right.
You get it. So you weren't completely taken out of that kind of realm of like, hey, let's like, can we use you for our kind of projects and whatnot?
No, yeah, I mean, it's always something that I like to do, and I love working with other people and working on other people's stuff, and I think it's like what keeps me like a well-rounded musician.
Gotcha. And I mean, Chicana Batman, not a bad gig to be a
Yeah,
part of.
not at all.
No. Um, yeah, Carlos is of course amazing, and Gabriel, um, two great dudes, and they've been on the podcast. So if you haven't listened to that, go
Oh,
check it
nice.
out. Great guys, great interviews. But the second gig was on Conan, eh?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know that that was gonna be the case. They had sent me like a couple shows. I think the first show was the Glass House in Pomona,
Hmm.
which is a cool venue. And then I didn't know that, and I got a call from Bardo, who's the main lead singer. And he was like, hey, and I just wanted to, he was just giving me, he's like, I just wanted to give some notes on some of the songs. We're gonna be playing this one on Conan. I was like, on what? So, it was like a couple weeks away. So I was like, oh wow. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Wow. And what was it good?
It
Did
was
you
really cool, a lot
you
of fun.
liked it? That's kind of crazy coming into it kind of blind and then just being thrusted in.
Totally. And like I, truthfully like hadn't specifically with, at that time I was playing a lot of like organ parts for them. And like I really hadn't played that much organ live for my own stuff. So they're like, this is what we're gonna play on live television. I was like, okay. So, but yeah, super, super exciting.
I mean, you move to LA once and then you get on Conan a few weeks later. That's the way it works. That's how it usually works, right? Nikki, you can attest to that.
Yeah, I can attest to that. And then it's
Mhm.
all downhill from there.
No, I can attest to that. That's wild though.
Yeah.
Um, did you take that time as like, oh my gosh, like I kind of needed this to step away to have a breather in a sense?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, I definitely, I think, chalked it up to that. I think because it also allowed me, like, to come back to New York in between the tours that I would like. The first year I was out here touring with them, in between those tours, I was going back to New York, and I was writing and recording this last album kind of without, it was the start of it. So without knowing it was going to be this album, but that's when I started writing with Joe Crispiano. And it allowed me to come to New York and just do that rather than be living there and like be working 3 jobs and like, be kind of scatterbrained. I could just go there and just like hibernate and write and work on music. And so it kind of, aside from being like a new venture in LA, it like allowed me to do what I actually wanted to be doing in New York when I was there.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Were you inspired, with your time within, Chicano Batman and kinda playing with them and seeing what they're doing? Did they have, did they give you some inspiration for like, "Okay, like, maybe I should be trying to do this with my band or maybe not do this and try to supplement this for that?" Or was it more of like a clarity moment for yourself of like, "Okay, like, I just gotta hit the reset button on this."
I would say like a little bit of both for sure. I think just working with new musicians and honestly like being in a different part of the like a part of the country, like those guys all grew up here in LA listening to way different, a lot, we grew up listening to a lot of the same stuff, but also a lot of really different stuff. And they were influenced by a lot of stuff that I hadn't like heard before. And um seeing how they go about writing songs, and yeah, just like the whole operation definitely had a lot of influence in me, and then just like living in LA, I feel like has influenced my writing. There's like certain tones that I'm like, I think it's just from being here, and yeah, so I think a little bit of both, and then just having that, being able to that kind of cater towards, yeah, having a new perspective about how to work, on my own stuff in New York for sure also. And we were also weirdly connected. Like I had sort of just started connecting with a lot of musicians and people in New York that they recorded with and were working with also, just like in a different space, so it was like all these little connections that, little threads of like commonality.
That's amazing. When what was the final nail in the coffin? Like, okay, I'm just gonna move out to Los Angeles. When did you come to that realization? Like, all right, this is where I'm gonna go.
I think I had done like the summer dates with them, and then they had a tour booked. They booked like a full like 7-week tour in fall of 2017. That was with Krungbin, and that was like, a lot, like a 7-week tour where I was like, okay, at that point, I had gone back in August to New York, to actually clear out my place. I mean, I essentially had to make a decision because I couldn't keep my apartment in Brooklyn because my roommates were like, you can't sublet forever. So I moved all my stuff and
Grab the 2 other bags, of course, yeah, and hit the road.
yeah, somewhat. No, those I sent like a bunch of boxes over on the Greyhound, which if I could give anyone advice in terms of shipping things across the country, that's not, it's the cheapest way, but it's not the most reliable way to go.
Did you really think that oh, it'll be pristine when it gets here? What's
I did not think that. I to their credit, like none of my records were broken. My speakers worked. They just looked like. I mean, I think I did a really good packing job.
You were
So
doing records through the Greyhound?
yeah, I sent all my stuff. It's not a bad option. Yeah, for low in cash, but yeah. So essentially, at that point, I had to give up my place. So basically, I left, and it was good timing because we were going to be on the road for 7 weeks. So like I was able to, I think we had like 2 weeks off. So I came back to LA during those 2 weeks and just like looked for apartments for when we were going to get back in December. So I found a place and just kind of like signed on it for the next month or whatever.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And touring with Khruangbin and Chicana Batman. That's powerhouse right there.
Yeah, that was a really special tour.
I could see your point in that. I could see why that'd be a special one. Wow. Um, and you said that you were kind of starting to write This Life during that period.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I had come back. Yeah, I was basically having writing sessions with Joe Crispiano when I was back in New York. And we at first were just writing just to kind of like see if we had a good flow and that kind of thing. And yeah, just started writing a bunch of songs.
Did it feel good immediately, like right when you started picking it up and starting to hash out some ideas?
It did, yeah. Yeah, I think we have a good back and forth. Yeah, it kind of felt like it fit pretty soon into the process.
And was that the first thing that you picked up out here in the West Coast? Where did you like, okay, let me see where we're at with this potential record? At that point, it was a potential record, I'm assuming, and just sort of pick it up from there.
Yeah, yeah, we basically we started recording, like I would go back and I would go, he lives in Staten Island. He had like a, studio kind of set up in his house. And so I would just go there, I would take the ferry over or whatever, and we started doing all these mostly demos on his 8 track that he had there. And then we sent them to a friend of his, Homer Steinweiss, who's an amazing drummer and producer, and songwriter also. But we sent them to him. He's a co-owner of a really amazing studio in Queens called Diamond Mine. And he was just like, these are really cool, you guys should come in, let's record some drums on them. So it kind of just like very naturally started to become like more serious recording. So we're like, all right, we've started to get batches of songs, and recorded those first couple there. And then Joe was starting to build out a studio of his own in Dumbo. So we just kind of like kept planning trips in between my tours with Chicana Batman, where I was coming back. And or I was writing also a lot, like just if I was on the road with them, like writing in the van or whatever, and writing out here. And then would go and visit Joe in New York, and we would flesh out um the rest of the songs. So once he started building his studio in Dumbo, that's when we kind of decided, like, all right, this is going to be a record. We're going to, really kind of get more organized about how to work.
Was it clear to you and Joe that it's like, okay, it's time to start like really putting this down proper, instead of just like kind of demoing and seeing what worked and what didn't? It was like, okay, this is pretty fleshed right now, so let's just go for it.
Yeah, I think it was like a combination of necessity and that, because we were recording in his place, but he had a downstairs neighbor who, like, if we made even like the slightest bit of noise, she would bang on the ceiling, like a kind of your classic. So which kind of catered towards, it kind of became part of the vibe of the record. There's the one song, Run Run, where like I'm singing pretty like quietly, and kind of it's a little more vibey in terms of the vocal. And that was literally because part of that vocal is the original demo vocal, where I was like whispering into the microphone because I couldn't make a lot of noise, but it kind of gave it this vibe that turned the song into what it is. So but yeah, I think the rest of the songs, we needed somewhere where we could actually like record proper drums and all the different things.
Seemed like the apartment would be a very apt place. I think that the neighbor would love that. Full
Right.
kit. Yeah.
Rocking full kit.
I mean, yeah, that's probably what she was. She's probably just giving notes. Really, probably in
Yeah.
hindsight, you could probably see that she's like, no, you gotta mix it differently and stuff like that. She's probably another producer.
I think they've been battling it out since. As far as I know, I'm pretty sure she's moved now. But
We're gonna check in with that. We're gonna give a disclaimer at the end of the thing, and you're gonna check with him and see if she's what she has said since then.
yeah, we should
We're gonna
send her a copy of the record and see what she thinks. So
Yeah,
thank you for your help.
yeah. Thank you for your notes.
Yeah,
Special thanks. Um, Now what album number was this life in terms of the Nicky Egan project? What number were you on? Was it number 3 or 4?
I mean, technically the third, yeah.
Wow. So was that whole time that you were recording that in getting it ready, did it feel like, oh yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to do? Like this is where I need to be at this moment?
Um, yeah, I think it, yeah, I mean, it definitely, I felt like, we were both pretty present in making trying to, yeah, just be present in that whole process. And I mean, Joe's someone who I respect so much in terms of his musicianship, and um so I and he kind of produced the album and got a lot of people on there that like I've would only have dreamed of working with years before. So it was a pretty special um yeah, special recording process, and just like time in general.
That's awesome. Now, when you first took these songs and were performing them live, did you perform a little bit of them live before like the record actually came out, and just to see what the reaction would be from the crowd?
Yeah, we were um sorry, performing them, yeah, for I mean, it also, because it was just releasing it took much longer than I expected. So there was times where, okay, I thought it was going to come out this month, and then so, but yeah, we were performing it a good amount before it came out.
Was it on the East Coast or the West Coast that you were kind of trying to get them out there and see what people's reaction was?
Mostly on the East Coast. We had like a couple of New York shows, and then we did a couple duo shows where we opened for Chicano Batman in like the Southeast, which was fun. And that was like a whole different, trying to figure out how to perform the album duo.
And in
Um,
Florida, of all places, of course. I mean, your
yes,
stomping grounds. Yeah,
literally.
a lot of pressure.
So yeah, and then I think he came out here. We did like one show out here. Yeah.
And what was the band consisting of, instrumentation wise at that point?
It's been for the most part drums, bass, guitar, um, some sort of like background vocalist and percussion, or separate with those, and then myself, and I've been playing keys.
Wow, so pretty full, kind of full
Yeah.
body thing there. Was it difficult to get people on board, um, or just find people in general to play out here when you first started performing out here? Was that like a difficult feat? Like, I don't really know anybody out here, or did you know people out here that were down to play with you? How did you go
Uh,
about filling out the rest of the band?
yeah, I did know a handful of people out here, luckily. And kind of meeting, a lot of meeting people through Chicano Batman's community and people that I met touring. So kind of like a hodgepodge of both people that I knew and people I was meeting. And it always takes a while. I think like consistency with bands is definitely important in terms of like fleshing out a sound, which for me has been tough, because I do like um I hire my band, so sometimes it can be tough. Sometimes people just have other gigs, and having people come in and out. And I think for me, guitar wise, it's always a little hard, just because Joe has such a specific style of playing. So yeah, it's always nice when I can have him on the gig, and he just knows having produced the record, he knows the record, as well as I do.
That's awesome. Is it? I mean, you said the guitar is really a really prime kind of thing that needs to be exactly the way it's supposed to sound. Like, there's no real. I mean, there is wiggle room, of course, but it has a particular sound that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think stylistically, there's just a sound that tend to favor. Um, and I think because the songs are like the parts are pretty specific and like fleshed out on the record, just wanting to hear them pretty close to the record. But I want people to feel like they can express themselves and their style of playing. So I think it's kind of like finding that sweet spot and letting people do their thing, and not, micromanaging the thing, but also you want, it is music that I should be like catered towards a song.
Right. Yeah, and you really like to micromanage and make sure that everybody's doing exactly what you want them to do, regardless of if they want to do it or not.
Right,
That's the kind of thing.
right, exactly. It's a
You say,
very
"Hey, it's my band. I say what goes." That's your take on it, right?
you're either in or you're out.
Yeah, that's it.
No, I hope not. I hope that's not how I come off.
We actually have your bandmate here, one of your bandmates. Let's bring him on right now and see what he thinks. Um, when it finally was coming to fruition, like we were saying before, with getting out of demos and really laying it down, what was your feeling towards that album? Did you know that you wanted to have it kind of revolve around life itself, or did it just kind of come into play that all these songs kind of talked about all these things that people deal with throughout their lives?
I think it just kind of happened that way. It's definitely, all the songs were written just from whatever I was feeling or we were feeling. And I mean, that was definitely This Life in particular. That song was pretty specific to, Joe played in the Daft Kings for 10 years, and they had lost Sharon Jones, like, I guess 2016, I think it was. And right at the same month that I lost my aunt, who was a creative, and like her and Sharon actually had pretty much like the exact same trajectory in terms of their battles with cancer. And it was a very interesting just sort of, we kind of like shared a very similar loss. So I think that influenced that song in particular. And then a lot of the other songs just talking about transitioning, from that had to do with the move and where I was at in life, and similarly with him, where he was at. And yeah.
Yeah, my favorite one was Greyhound Shipping. That was my favorite one off that album. And
I guess
I really wanted to know what that was about.
soon to be written.
Um, Before the actual album came out, through Coal Mine, there was that single that was released with it was a 7-inch, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
With it was This Life on the front side, and what you mentioned before, Run Run, right? Was on
That was
the
actually
B-side.
Back to You and Run Run.
Oh, Back to You. Okay. Well, we're gonna cut that out. We're gonna fix that in post. Um, did you feel like those two songs were a good, like, kind of entrance or gateway point to like what the album was all about? Like, hey, like this is kind of the vibe that we're going for with this new record.
Yeah, I think I maybe like had gotten with Back to You just like some good responses with that one. I felt like it was like a kind of feel good song that exactly would have been like a good introduction. And then just trying to, it's always trying to think of a B side. It's like, okay, what's the vibey B side one, So that's kind of where it came from. And at the time I was doing an Indiegogo campaign to try and release it, because I didn't have any sort of distribution deal. So that pressing that 7-inch was just an initial attempt at like having something to give donors for that campaign.
Wow. It ended up being more. How did you kind of secure a deal with Coal Mine to put it out?
So originally I had launched an Indiegogo campaign that was successful, and because I had been shopping it around a little bit to no luck. And then after the campaign, I was reached out to from the guys that run Transistor Sound, which is Kelly Finnegan's like imprint. So he's on Coal Mine. Amazing, I'm sure you know, amazing artist
Oh,
and
of course. I know all the amazing art. No, yes, of
um
course.
so it's his imprint along with two other gentlemen over there. And yeah, they were just, they were looking to put out more releases with Transistor, and they had just signed a distro deal with Coal Mine. So originally I was putting it out with them. And I was, I was like, cool, the record's done, ready to go kind of thing. And then it became more difficult than I think like we had anticipated. Um and they kind of got involved with a lot of other just kind of like life things among, just that was 2020. So I think COVID hitting right then, the pandemic just changed the trajectory of Transistor itself. So I put out a couple singles with them, and then it kind of just transferred over to Coal Mine. So essentially Coal Mine just, even though they were distributing through them, they kind of took over the release full time. So it was kind of a weird trajectory where a lot of like stop and go and that kind of stuff. But ultimately, I feel really, really grateful that it came out on Coal Mine. I have a lot of respect for those guys and all the artists that are on there. So yeah, feels like a good home for the record.
Great group over there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. With all that being said, and that whole kind of path you had to traverse in order from like writing it and hashing it out and fleshing it out and working with so many different people and so many things going into this record, what was your initial reaction when you actually held that record, like it was printed and it was done and you were holding it for the first time? What was going through your mind during that?
I mean, it was pretty surreal for sure, just, I mean, in general, like I've been working on music for, at least 15, for 15 years. And it's like, so I've never had something on vinyl. So that was really special. I mean, even before I held it, I remember seeing the first post of someone who had got, they probably pre-ordered it. So they actually got the record before I had seen the hard copies. And I remember them holding it up, and I like started crying just seeing the post. I was like, oh my God, like, it's pretty special to see someone holding something that you've been working on for years.
Yeah,
um
I
yeah.
could only imagine the mixed emotions through that
Yeah,
time.
within those years you go through like, this is shit, okay, this is good, this is shit, this is good. What am I doing? So I'm glad I was back to the like, yay.
That you don't want to be this is shit when it comes out. That's yeah,
Right.
bad. And of course you would never feel that way, Nikki. Of course.
No artist.
Even if it was shit, you would lie to yourself and be like, no, this is what it needs to be.
Right.
That's that's an amazing kind of journey. Nikki, you're awesome.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate you having me on here.
Thank you for coming on. But before I let you go here, I got some promo to do. So This Life by Nicky Egan is streaming everywhere, correct?
Yep.
All right, awesome. Wherever the people get their music, that's where they can find it. And it's a great album. And of course, as we mentioned, Coal Mine Records put it out. So you can find it at coalminerecords.com, right? That's the best place, or one of the best places.
Yep, sure.
Good deal. And through your Bandcamp as well, right? You also have some copies there.
Yep, my Bandcamp or my website, which is nickyeganmusic.com.
And nickyegan.bandcamp.com for the Bandcamp. And there's some merch over there as well on your website, correct?
Yeah, I've got some t-shirts left, and I've got some handmade lyric books as well. A couple copies left.
That's awesome. And you can stay up to date with everything else by following you on Instagram. Is that the best place for tour and news and all this good stuff?
Yeah, definitely.
That's
And that's
at
Nick.
Nikki_Egan on Instagram. And also you've been dabbling in some graphic design, right?
I have a little bit, yeah.
Okay. And if the people are interested in hiring you, for that sort of thing, where can the people reach you? Where would be the best place to go check out your stuff?
I would say to slip in my DMs there on Instagram. But yeah, I have a portfolio up at the moment. That's necreative.squarespace.com if you want to
Mm,
check out some of that work.
very nice. All right, awesome. Nikki, you're amazing. Do we miss anything, by the way? We gotta plug anything else?
I don't think so. No.
All right, awesome. Well, Nikki, thank you again. I'm gonna stop recording this. I'll talk to you in a minute. You're the best. Thank you.
Thanks so much.